Good evening. Welcome everybody on the sixth episode of Mindset Shift. And today we are going to discuss why manager struggles to motivate their team. And as the topic suggests, it's a as old a problem as industrial civilization, and probably will try to find some solution around it. I'm Yogesh Kabir. I'm an executive coach. I represent the organization Alternative Leadership. We expertise in leadership development, team building, emotional intelligence, and how to build strong relationship in teams. So, welcome. And today, joining me in this conversation is Akansha. So, I would like to welcome Akansha on stage. Welcome, Akansha.
Thank you for the welcome. Hello, everyone. I am Akanksha Singh. I am a leadership coach and founder of Alternative Leadership. We work together, Yogesh and I. Three of our offerings are executive coaching, creating learning journeys, and one of solutions if companies are looking for. Yes, we work with teams extensively and the leaders. So, yep.
Yeah. So, kicking off today's conversation, why managers struggle to motivate their employee. So, just to create a context, recently a Gallup study shows that more than 85% of Indian employees are disengaged. And it's not an Indian problem, it's more like a universal problem because for different countries, the similar number varies anywhere between 70 to 90. That means only 20 to 30% of people are engaged there in their jobs. And that is a big issue that need to be addressed. Right. So I would like to start the conversation with the word in the headline itself, that is motivation. So, what is motivation? How does it play it out, and why it's so difficult uh, to understand it and move around it? So, I would like to invite you on your opinion. Is what is motivation? What is your understanding of motivation?
In my close to decade span of career, what I have understood very clearly is that the word motivation itself is understood very, or let's say the word motivation is very misunderstood. Um, the normal default approach is carrot and stick approach, which we often see not just at workplace but in our homes or in, it's a very go-to idea of parenting as well, of teaching as well, right? But if we are thinking beyond this, the default setup, the default area, if we dissect the word motivation or the idea of motivation, it's never the prerequisite of any sort of a work, any sort of a task. It's a result of something that you have started, it's a result of something, an action, probably. And at that moment, it helps you continue with that action, continue bringing that result. So the bottom line is motivation is never a prerequisite. Now the common point does come at workplace, specifically we are speaking in the context of workplace, is that we think we can motivate people by giving external rewards or something that is tangible, that is there to tell, oh, if you get this work done, we'll get you promoted, or if you get this work done, basically the reward system, right? Now, you having worked alongside me and being in this industry for quite some time now, How does it look like from your perspective? Motivation.
Yeah, I think you rightly pointed out that motivation is so research on motivation is as old as philosophy and psychology. Uh, but I think it is still quite misunderstood term, and I think we still use a definition which is at least a century old. That motivation is all about carrot and stick, right? You dangle a carrot in front of people, and people will do anything and everything that you want, or if they don't do it, you use your stick. And and it's a century old. It was proposed probably in the early uh, time of 1910 or 1920, and we have had much better understanding of motivation now, but somehow it has not reached uh, the common knowledge, or not have been included in the organizational structure. So what I understood about motivation is, in a very basic definition, starting that innate ability to do something, right? So as you mentioned out, that the motivation is as such not a problem, because if somebody is joining an organization, they have that innate willingness to do the work. And I think this is where organizational structure actually become a hindrance, that so many times people want to do the work, but they are not able to do it. So the problem of motivation is not how to motivate people, it's more like how to unleash that motivation and not become an hindrance in that motivation.
How to unleash and not become hindrance. Sounds quite a gap or quite a scope where we actually work. And coming back to what I was thinking and what I was saying, that external motivating factors, in fact, since we work with companies, many companies have some sort of a Thursday celebration, some sort of a Friday celebration, just to end the week on a happier note, celebratory note. On a surface level, it does not become, or it does not seem like an hindrance, right? It does not become a bottleneck. But on lighter note, it does feel like we are trying to motivate people with having some sort of a fun, some sort of a celebration, right? I don't think that it adds to the idea of motivation on a deeper level. When we think about the word motivation, there are two things that come up, the components. One is intrinsic motivation, and the other one is extrinsic motivation. In fact, a book called Drive by Daniel Pink, does talk on these two aspects. And in very basic, very bottom line, if I just give a crisp idea of what is intrinsic motivation, it's the willingness, the internal drive, or the passion, that clarity that you have a purpose and you yourself are wanting to do that work, wanting to excel in it. You look forward to take that action, do that work, show up at workplace. You're excited internally. Extrinsic motivation would be me waiting for that paycheck at the start of the month, me looking to be promoted, my name on that tag or that glass door written Akansha saying manager, something like that. Or somewhere that I feel I am superior now and everybody knows that. And it's very visible for everyone and for me as well. to differentiate that, oh, this is me, this is you, sort of a thing. So that comes under extrinsic motivation. It's very tangible, it's very visible, it's very like transferable. So for very long time, as you rightly mentioned, it was probably in the early 19th century where we thought extrinsic motivators could actually motivate people to give a good output. And we haven't moved ahead from that time. In fact, one of the research that the book Drive itself mentions is that you can only use extrinsic motivation when there is a mechanical work. I want to repeat it. So you can only use extrinsic motivators to motivate your white collar employees when there is a mechanical work, which opens up the discussion that when it's a problem solving area, when it's creative area, when people want to bring in their style, that creativity, which means extrinsic motivation would not work there. So science is going different, or science itself says things differently, but we, the businesses, the teams, we are working it in a very different way. And especially since we work in Indian context and Indian workplace, salary, job security, and hierarchy does become a dominant factor. And hence our idea of, I feel, continuing with the century old approach, maybe close to century old approach, that external motivators using as carrot and stick comes in the picture. Now, I'm curious to know what has been your idea on this, or have you
I think,
coached anybody on this
yeah.
matter?
No, I think what you mentioned is very much right. That carrot and stick approach was proposed at the start of the revolution because the work was very mechanical, right? People were very doing very repetitive work, but since now we have moved so much to understand that the basic safety framework, job security, money can motivate you only to a level, right? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs put in that you can motivate only to a certain level with safety and security, right? And we have to move up forward. And I think you mentioned Drive by Daniel Pink, and I think that is in a way a quite a best book to summarize all the research around motivation. And I think the framework that is shared is autonomy, mastery, purpose, the three trinity of motivation. Eh, I think summarize the whole research around motivation beautifully. And I think it would make sense if we discuss all these three point in detail so that our listener can benefit from that. And let me start with autonomy because I have had only yesterday I had a conversation with a coachee, and she is IITIM background and she is looking for the new job, and her requirement was that I just want a job where people don't question me for everything. So she have become the mother recently, and she wants some flexibility that if there is an emergency, then maybe she can once in a while, not regularly, even once in a while, she can maybe go an hour late because probably she need to go to a doctor with her son, or once in a while maybe she can leave early because she have some urgency that she need to. And she said that I am willing to put in extra effort, I am even willing to put in hours on my weekend, But I want that flexibility, and that flexibility have to come with trust or giving me autonomy that I will do the work. So the first, I think, the basic human necessity is the autonomy. We don't like people telling us what to do when we know that we are going to do it. We are saying that I'm going to do it, then just trust me that I will do it. So I think that is the very basic need of autonomy that human require, and that can be the biggest motivator in our life, that somebody is trusting us to do it and giving me the autonomy to do it whatever the way I want to do it, and so I'll do it, right?
Absolutely. Even the studies mention the one that you mentioned in the beginning, that Gallup has said that there's huge number of employees who are disengaged at workplace, even if they are high performers. One of the factors of job satisfaction is connected to autonomy. You are given that space to self direct yourself. You have the discretion power to execute the given task, given responsibility, the way you can do in a best manner without somebody micromanaging you. And that gives a sense of you driving things your way, yet following the deadline, the context, the idea of, or the whole agreed point of a project, let's say. But that adds up to the job satisfaction of an employee, and how not surprising it is, yet surprising it is. Because what we often see is a lot of micromanagement. A lot of time there's no autonomy because we have understood with the romanticizing of slavery that you have to be sitting on their head all the time and capturing every move, every head tilt of your employee. But giving employees a freedom to choose the execution of a project, or let's say how to utilize their time, can add up to their job satisfaction. And along with that, if I take the second component, the second key idea that Daniel Pink has mentioned in the book, which is mastery. If an employee has a sense of acceleration, if an employee has an idea that they are moving forward in their career, they are much more engaged at workplace, because that will give them not just sense of mastery but not a sense of achievement as well, that things are finally moving forward, my career is moving forward, which is again very one of the quite common reason why people leave their job or switch. Because if I what I have commonly heard is, whenever I ask anybody who has switched a job or left, is that I was stuck there. There was no room to grow. There was no growth in the company. That is also a sense of dissatisfaction coming from workplace.
Right.
So sense of mastery, the desire to continually improve at your work, also is attached with the idea of me doing the work in my way. I agree to
Right.
everything, the brief of the project, but let me do it in my style, in my way, in my own time. Let me have that autonomy.
Right. And uh, adding to that discussion is, we have again that innate desire to master a skill, right? That is why we constantly try to find ways of doing work in more effective ways, right? and and I think that is why people with so much effort, uncertainty, and extra work required, choose to become an entrepreneur rather than doing a job, because that gives you, again, the all the three things that we are discussing. It gives you autonomy, it gives you chance to master your skill, and it gives you a purpose, right? So if organization can create a work environment which provide these three things, then they'll get the motivation and sense of ownership from an employee that you generally see in an entrepreneur, right? And how beautiful that would be if organization can do that, right? And I think coming to the sense of purpose, I think people hear a lot about this word that create a purpose. People move with a why. I think Simon Sunak have so much talk about start with why, but I think, and I think that is why organization started creating mission, vision statements, so that people get a sense of uh, a purpose in their work. But I think, and we know that these mission and vision statement, nobody hear it, nobody sees it. It just become a prop in your wall in your organization. But I think I recently came across uh, an in-depth, I think, version of creating a purpose, which is very human. Because the thing is that if you say that you are impacting 10,000 lives, it doesn't sit well with us as a human, because it becomes an statistics. There's no emotion to it to create a sense of purpose. So I think what was discussed is that in that purpose, rather than doing what I'm doing, create for who, and create stories, find stories where the work done by an individual is affecting the life of other human being, or creating a better future for a future generation, or earth as a whole. And when you give them that particular example, then it clicks as a human. Because otherwise it's a statistic. Oh, I affected 10,000 lives. No, I don't care about 10,000 lives. But if you give me a particular example that this is how you affected the life of uh, let's say Kabir, then it makes a sense to me, because now it's a story that I can relate to.
Makes sense. The purpose, the mystery of life, a human life where every human is trying to solve this mystery. I would like to dial back few steps and also touch upon the idea of mastery, in which the innate desire to excel is where the scope or our scope comes in the picture, when we come in the picture as an alternative leadership. Because this is where a lot of time company provides lot of resources, lot of hand holding, lot of trainings for employees to become master in what they are doing and providing growth opportunities. Because somewhere the growth of employee does fall on company's shoulder, and especially the one who have been doing really well, carve out a path for them to take up bigger roles, move the ladder, move up the ladder, right? And purpose, the third point in the trinity of motivation given by Daniel Pink. When people understand that there is a story behind a number, and now the difference between 10,000 lives, impacting 10,000 lives, and a one good story out of it can make a huge difference. Human brain or humans are very emotional as a human being, as a social animal, and something moves when you bring a good story that has been affected or that has been impacted by your own work. And I have seen in my work, in my sessions, and in my coaching sessions as well, that once interview is done, people have no idea about their vision and mission of the company. It was in one of the sessions that we have tried it and tested it, that we had used the keywords from vision and mission statements and asked the audience in the workshop if it sounds resonating. Apart from the acknowledgement that these were the good words and blah 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 in life, it can help and everything, people had no idea those were the keywords, key statements from the mission and vision of their own company, including the managers, including the leaders. So, a sense of purpose is very well connected to the North Star, the North Star of your work life, which could be the company for which they are working and whose life they are impacting. And so, based on this, we had done one of our work where the active part is to create the who personality, so that audience or the participants of our workshop and employees of the company can actually relate to, and that who personality is very well connected to the company's mission and mission, vision and mission, why they are existing and what they are doing and how they are helping their own customers. And that's how I think actual difference could be made on workplace practicality, the pragmatic way of bringing these theories into picture. If you just keep motivating externally, I think after a point, after a scope of mechanical work, they would need much more to feel intrinsically motivated to come there, show up at workplace, actually put a good or best foot forward.
Right. Uh, and I think creating that, I think the common theme to create that would be, I think, trust. Because, and this is where the organization, I think, struggle a lot in creating trust from towards their employees, right? You cannot give your employee autonomy until you trust them to do it. You cannot move them towards the path of mastery until you trust them that if they are struggle, we'll provide them support, but in the end they'll figure it out, right? And until this happen, they cannot feel a sense of purpose in their work. And I think what I've noticed is that the lack of trust start from some bad apples. So what happens is, let's say an organization say that okay, we'll have a policy of uh, you just file for refund, we won't check it, we'll just refund you whatever the amount that you are saying is for refund, right? So it's a good policy, it based on trust, it will move so much hassle, and it will save your cost actually, because now you don't have to put in the people who are just checking every each and every uh, invoices that people have filed. But there would be some bad apples who would take advantage of this policy. They'll see, oh, nobody is checking. I can just file any random bill and maybe get a refund. But then probably the organization maybe catches those bad apple and they feel, oh, people are misusing this, and they scrap the whole initiative. So 90-95% of people who were trustworthy, they get punished because of uh, the steps of some bad apples. And this is a very common theme in any policy, that whatever check and balances organization try to create, it is to catch those 5% of bad apples, and due to that 95% of people who are trustworthy, who are honest, get suffered, because you are trying to ensure that system becomes 100%, but it never becomes 100%. People who are not trustworthy, who are dishonest, they'll find a way to cheat the system. But I think if organization can start with trust, then I think the processes can become very simpler, and people will. There is enough research to show that people uh, throw back your trust with trust. If you trust a people, they are more likely to put faith in you and repay that trust with trust.
But that's also a huge ask for a company, right? To go ahead and start with trust and continue with the trust even if you have found few bad apples. Speaking of trust and how it's also connected, I feel in my own experience, how I see is to, in general, the job satisfaction. I think somewhere bottom line, job satisfaction is one of the dominant reason why either the employee stays with the company or moves away. And I feel if we speak from a lens where we are looking at as a referee, let's say, an empire. We are distant. We are not on either side. Okay. And that's usually our stance in company. What I have seen is, and the common narrative, if I take the devil's narrative, which is people leave their managers, not their workplaces. People leave their bosses, not their offices or again the company. It's good to gain little engagement by writing such hooks or posts on LinkedIn or wherever, but does it hold any truth? Again, coming or standing from a point of neutrality, do we have anything that backs up that a relationship, a rapport with the management affects employees, their overall experience? You
No,
are
I
on mute.
think there's a McKenzie study that you shared with me, and I think it. I can even, I think, put in the graph. I think so.
Yeah.
This shows that for employees, and having that interpersonal or job satisfaction, having a good relationship with management is very very important. So having a good relationship with manager is very important for job satisfaction, for interpersonal relationship satisfaction. And whenever people don't feel that relation, or that relationship does not develop, then again people don't feel trusted or don't find the satisfaction from the job that they are looking for. But I think what you mentioned is there's a lot of individual blame around it, that hey, managers are bad. But I think the problem is much deeper to the level of company culture, because even the best people, if you put in a environment which tolerate or support toxic behavior, then people are more likely to do that. And there's again enough research where good hearted people have done started behaving in a different way, because organization culture is supporting, promoting people who are toxic, individualists, very selfish, they want their own growth even at the expense of other people. And if company culture is promoting that, then people are more likely to behave in that way. So I think what I
Yeah.
want, yeah, I
Sorry,
think what,
there was a lag from my side.
sorry. And so what uh, thought I was coming towards was that motivation is very personal also, and because we are moving, I think, towards the role of manager and what they can or how they can manage team better. So I think that understanding that motivation is very much personal. It cannot, one simple recipe cannot fit all kind of thing. And I would like to know your perspective on that, how that personalization can happen in a sense.
Absolutely. And funny enough that you mentioned culture, a culture where there is a trust, a culture that encourages job satisfaction, is a culture where teams work very effectively. And currently, it has become a, I don't know, million trillion dollar question to get teams work together effectively. Every company either just settles with the outbound team building intervention or tries to get teams work together and make it successful. Funnily, again and again, what comes in the picture of a good culture which can get teams work better is having a psychological safety,
Right.
because people would want to trust and rely on you or the other team members, so that there's a mutual understanding that whenever I am in need, somebody will show up for me. And
Right.
same I'll do. If anybody is in need of any sort of help, I will be there. Which also speaks about the dependability. You do not want to be so isolated at workspace. What we have been talking till now, bringing the point of mission and vision, is also point where teams, employees, and all these people need a structure and clarity.
Right.
A vague idea always create a lot of confusion and lot of noise. Meaning, which is the fourth point, it is connected to purpose, a sense of purpose. Is there a feeling that I am contributing to something that is impacting in a larger sense? Am
Right.
I adding value to anything? Which speaks very clearly, crisply in the fifth point, which is impact. Am I adding value? These are 5 points which are the concise or the conclusion of the project which was done by Google. The project was Aristotle. And these are also the key areas of Belbin team rules. So, culture is where, as I would say, culture is where a good talent is nurtured. You would want good talent in your company, the outperformers, and why not? But you need to create a culture which nurtures, which is the most often time overlooked. And coming to the part that motivation is individualistic as well. Yes, we all have some sort of a uniqueness to us, a different way or a different approach always excites us to excel in our work or something like the creativity part, right? But if we, since we are talking, continuing with the idea of how management's role and presence affects or impacts experience of employees, and we just saw with the graph, if a manager, a team lead, somebody who is handling people under them, if they are well aware, if they have a greater idea, sense of their emotional intelligence, and in general way has developed a rapport with their team members to have an understanding that, oh, maybe a good feedback works really fair, really works for this particular person, or a very crisp, clear, short talk works for this person, something like this. Do you have an understanding, individual understanding of your own team members? Have you built that rapport to such a level without intriguing or without pushing too much the boundaries of life, but have you built that rapport? And if you have, and you are self aware, you can have that self leadership in such a way that you have developed such rapport, you can handle this individual motivating styles in much better way. And that does bring up the point that the more aware a person who is leading, the better the experience would be for the team members who are working with the team lead, the manager, the business leader.
Right. And I think the problem lies in how the managers are being promoted, right? Because most of the time manager are people who are very good individual contributor, who are achieving the goals that they are being given to them. They are generally being promoted, but role of a manager is very different, and becoming a good individual contributor is very different, because the individual who is the best performer would more likely be self-centered, overconfident, even to the point of narcissism, right? Arrogant, manipulative. But if you promote that person and you say, hey, now your manager role is to uh, make other team members life easier, what we call the servant leadership, right? Then either can be two things. Either you develop that ability in that person, either you train that person to be more emotional intelligent, empathetic, understanding their role. Otherwise they're going to do whatever they have been doing, because they'll think that, hey, I get promoted for doing these things, I'm going to do the same things. So I think this is where the problem lies, because measuring performance, we have done so much work in measuring performance, but there's very little ways or work around how you can actually measure, let's say, who is trustworthy, who is more likely to be for somebody else. And at this point I think there's a very good video of Simon Sunak, and I would like to uh, play that, and so that can take our conversation forward.
Performance, traditional. This is, how are you off the battlefield? What kind of person are you? The way they put it is, I may trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? They're SEALs. This is what they told me. Nobody wants this person, the low performer of low trust, of course. Of course, everybody wants this person, the high performer of high trust. Of course. What they learned is that this person, the high performer of low trust, is a toxic leader and a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over this person. This is the highest performing organization on the planet, and this person is more important than this person. And the problem in business is we have lopsided metrics. We have 1,000,001 metrics to measure someone's performance and negligible to no metrics to measure someone's trustworthiness. And so what we end up doing is promoting or bonusing toxicity in our businesses, which is bad for the long game because it eventually destroys the whole organization. The irony is it's unbelievably easy to find these people. Go to any team and say, who's the asshole? And they will all point to the same person. Equally, if you go to any team and say, who do you trust more than anybody else? Who's always got your back? And when the chips are down, they will be there with you. They will also all point to the same person. It's the best gifted natural leader who's creating an environment for everybody else to succeed, and they may not be your most individual highest performer. But that person, you better keep them on your team.
Right. So again, I think we are not saying don't promote the best performer. I think the best way forward can be that don't see best performer as the best manager. You need to train them. You need to impart new skills. And to bring in the cricket example, Kohli is the best performer since last decade, but probably not the best leader, right? Sachin, best and the best in the field, but probably not the best leader. So, not always your best performer becomes your best leaders. Promote them, give them more responsibility. But if you are going to give them a role of a leader, of managing people, but then you need to train them in emotional intelligence, how to build trust, how to give or receive feedback. These essential skills have to be imparted.
I agree to the point that we are not saying don't promote your outperformers, the high potential performers in the team. But there's a difference. If you want them to take people's managing rules, provide resources, handhold them, give them scope to learn these traits, these skills, so that they can at least do better compared to having no resources or no handholding. In fact, there's a research that says that mostly the people outperformers possess just technical skills. They are very good at what they are doing. But only 30% of them are likely to become the kind of leaders that prioritize and support employee satisfaction. In fact, Gallup research contains that only 1 in 10 people possess the necessary traits that great managers exhibits. Traits that include building relationship that create trust, open dialogue, and transparency. So you would want your manager, your team lead, your leader to be the high trustworthy person. In
Right?
fact, this is a very
And
funny, if I may continue,
yeah,
there's this funny idea that, as even Simon said in the video, that if you ask who is the most narcissist person in the team, everybody would look in one direction. And if you ask who is the most trustworthy person in the team, everybody would look in one direction. And those direction would be opposite oftentimes. In fact, most of the times.
right.
So somebody who manages, or you would want somebody to manage your team, continue with a culture that attracts more talent for your company to do well. You would want a trustworthy person.
Right. So I think that brings to finally the last concluding uh, part of our conversation. What can managers do? Finally, to our conversation, what can they specifically started doing from today to become a better managers?
Finally, answering the question why managers struggle to motivate their teams.
Right.
Definitely understand the very first bottom line from which we started is to provide autonomy. It is very well under your discretion that you can provide a certain autonomy to your team members. Be clear with that. Have an agreement of what is the scope of autonomy that they can maybe have. Do you understand that if any of your team members or let's say company has a very clear understanding that the new outperformers or the people who has a ability who are asset for your company who can grow with the company, are you providing anything for their development? Are you providing any sorts of resources for their development? Everybody cannot be ready with all sorts of skills. That is impossible to happen in reality. So every company would have people, high potential people, or people who are asset, who company wants to retain for the next decade. What is their growth path? Provide that. Provide the sense of purpose and mastery to them. And it is very practical. It is very doable. Along with that, build relationship, build rapport. Are you the person who team calls or reaches out when they feel they want that dependability? So I think these are three, 4 points that comes to my mind because these are the areas also where we have worked and also do um, at this time of career if you can possess some coaching skills, a way to coach your team members instead of beating them down or shouting at them, that would help in encouraging their intrinsic motivation. Because ultimately, after a point, external motivators won't work, they would actually do more harm. So, how can you transition very smoothly? That is where I feel is a game changing or water would be changing color. What comes to your mind?
I think you pointed out good points that uh, again learn some coaching skills. So rather than telling them what to do, help them figure out what they can do in their own autonomous, unique ways, and probably they'll figure out ways which are better than yours, right? So developing some coaching skills like uh, listening, open-ended questions. These are very simple skills that can be learned in a very fast and effective ways. And I think adding to how you can create autonomies, don't ask for status updates. Hey, कितना काम हो गया? Hey, ये हो गया क्या? I think if you have given them a deadline, respect that deadline, and in the meantime you can ask that, hey, do you need any help from my side? Or hey, I have not checked in with you since last week. Let's sit down, let's figure out what are the challenges you are facing. Let me figure out how I can help you. So rather than hovering over your team members that, hey, have you done this, have you done this, trust that they would fulfill the deadline. uh, be ready to support them, coach them whenever they need, right? And I think around that also, so what generally what I've seen is that if as a manager you don't know how to do difficult conversation, how to give feedback, then you generally give feedback when it have reached a level that you think that okay, now I can't avoid it. And then employee think that, hey, since month you have not said I'm doing anything wrong, and now you are saying I've done everything wrong. What kind of feedback is this? So I think continuous feedback, uh, and even the positive feedback. So generally feedback is associated that if you have done something wrong, then I'll come and have a talk with you. But if they have done something right also, then also come and have a conversation with them. Celebrate their micro achievement, not just wait for the big wins, so that people get a sense that if they are on the right direction, they are on the right path, they what they are doing right or what they are doing wrong, so that they can do the course correction, rather than having the last conversation that hey, you are not working right, we'll have to drop you off. So that conversation is never a good idea.
If I can take another 30 seconds. And also, did you just mention don't micromanage as one of the key takeaway that people can start doing today? Okay. Uh, let's see if I take the example of, let's say, a manager doesn't know how to give a feedback or doesn't know how to open a dialogue or doesn't know how to, maybe is struggling to lead. Why don't I invite all of you to my next program? Next cohort, enrollment of next cohort is open, and the program is on self leadership, where these are some of the skills that you can always learn from us. So yeah, always open, on always a seat available if you're coming from LinkedIn, and yeah, that could help.
Nice plugin, huh?
Thank you. Chalo,
Right.
then I think we have had a good conversation, and see you in the next conversation then.
So just let me take 2 minutes to summarize, because we have covered a lot of things. So for the benefits of listeners, let me summarize that we started our discussion that motivation is still very much misunderstood, or the understanding is very much at least a century old, that you can reward or punish people and feel that they would feel motivated. That is not how motivation works. That can only work in jobs which are very mechanical, very repetitive, not creative intellectual work that we do nowadays, right? Or anything that is repetitive will anyway we will be done by AI. So that is not a thing. What we need is better motivation, and we have a very good framework given by Daniel Pink in the book Drive, that work on three things: autonomy, mastery, purpose. Give them autonomy, trust them to do the work that have been assigned to them. Let them become the master of their craft. They'll create, feel a sense of purpose in it, create a sense of purpose, and through individual stories where people can directly relate with on a human to human level, and that is something human very much feel motivated towards. Make them feel a sense of purpose, that what they are doing is very much meaningful, creating a better life for other people, or creating a better future for the next generation. And this motivation is very much individualistic. So manager need a certain level of emotional intelligence, empathy, to understand what takes for what takes for who, right? So that they can have conversation to that person in the language that probably they prefer, right? And this is where probably manager go wrong, that they start micromanaging. They don't create clarity of their rules, how it is important, why it's important, and then they don't fulfill the emotional need of uh, their employees, right? And we need a culture of trust, emotional intelligence, so that people can uh, fulfill, or the manager can become a good manager, not the toxic manager. And if the culture promote, recognize toxic behavior, then people will behave in that way, right? And in the end, what manager can do, they can lead with empathy, they can lead with emotional intelligence, they can uh, not do the micromanagement and celebrate small wins. And to develop this, they can anyway join the self leadership program. Great. So thank you, Kancha, for joining me in this conversation. See you in the next.